threshold of the space-time continuum because your ancestors are fighting through your lungs and mind and the power of your imagination to get this story out during the people, and you will not be stopped by any fuss, by any mic, by any stage, by any MC, even Lebo Mashile in a Winnie Mandela t-shirt. Then Daphne will play this. And when you hear that, you know, Hore, it's game over. It's overs, cadovers. I was so impressed. As soon as Daphne started playing, the room went silent. And I was like, oh, these are my cultured Joburg people.
It is a beautiful
These are people
guitar.
who know how to act in a theater. I love them so much. These are my
guitar.
dignified, listening Africans. I want to invite you, please, to be yourselves. I know that in this corner of the world, we don't listen to things the way people listen to things in Austria and Luxembourg and Germany and Korea and Japan. Respectfully, we respond, we listen orally and orally. So if the spirit moves you to say, sure, hey, woo, yes, yeah, Jesus, Jesu, Makosi, hey, Mama, Yonki, feel free. Yes, yes. Be yourself, be true to yourself, just don't be obnoxious, because you know the line. There's always a line, and you can feel when someone has stepped over the line, right? But the fact that we are interactive is also what makes it so wonderful to perform on this continent. And I am so proud tonight to be from Johannesburg. You showed up and you showed out. So here we go. Tonight's theme is power and possibility. You have a program in your hand, in your seat, in your bag that details who each of these incredible individuals are. They're all advocates, they're all activists in some way, shape, or form. They're all incredibly accomplished, but tonight we get to meet them as storytellers. Let us welcome to the stage our very first storyteller. Webster is
What's an activist? Is that somebody who goes against the government?
Just somebody that has a cause that they,
Huh?
somebody that has a cause that they, protest for and support.
I was playing outside. And
Try to
then
get
my
rid of
mother
Donald,
calls me.
right?
Nasi ndoro no tenga
I
chiwo.
don't know.
Today
Try to figure
we
this
are going
out.
to buy bread. Ntega. Alone. I've never been to the stores to buy anything of consequence alone. The only time I've been to the stores to buy anything of consequence was when I would take along when my mother would send my older cousins. I was my mother's last born baby and still am. And as most of you know, last born babies rarely lift a finger in the home, especially in the home. Hence my sharp ndega, there was no way I was going to go to the bread queue alone. But
What do you think
one
about
thing
that?
you
Was it
don't
cooked right?
do
What's that?
What
One
think
thing
about
you
that?
don't
Was it cooked
do
right?
is make an African mother repeat herself
Good enough.
after giving an instruction. I knew I had to comply. So my older cousins had already been sent to the stores to buy other items. Because usually the things that we buy during this period will come on, on different days. But on this particular day, everything was just available all at once. So it was kind of a divide and conquer situation. Hence, I was home alone and was sent to go, to the bread queue. Being an 8-year-old Zimbabwean, I was convinced that Zimbabweans loved to stand in a queue. We used to queue to get into the bus. We used to queue to get into the bank. I even remember starting grade 1, I stood in a queue to get in class. Yeah. So this was the year 2008, or Gorenzara, the year of hunger, as most local Zimbabweans like to call it. And I know you days you're saying it's giving Zimbabwe. If it ever gave Zimbabwe, that time in 2008, that's when it was really giving Zimbabwe. Yeah. So it's 2008 and things are really tough. The inflation in the country, is so high. That my advice to anyone in this room who wants to be a billionaire, just look for $100 Zimbabwean dollar bill from that time. You can be a billionaire right then, but you'll be a poor billionaire. That's how terrible, things were at that time. So it's 2008. I didn't want to go to the bread queue, but African mothers being African mothers, shortly I was at the bread queue. So I was in grade 3, and I'd always been short for someone in grade 3. And I remember this distinctly because whilst I was standing in the queue, my face was digging into some woman's behind. And I was so glad that the person who was standing behind me was an age mate and not another towering figure that would probably squash me in the stampede that usually forms when the bakery doors open. Because believe it or not, us standing in the queue was just to show who had gotten there first. It had nothing to do whatsoever with who would get the bread first. So, we are standing in the queue, and I turn around, start chatting with a mate who was standing behind me. And our conversation was, that time you sleep with one eye open. Because although we're talking to each other, chit-chatting and all that, our focus was on the bakery doors and how to find ourselves at the front of the queue once those bakery doors open. And in this time, I was holding a paper bag with cash, and it's getting heavier and heavier. That was really a lot of money, physically, but not in terms of values. So I'm there with my paper bag, and at this point I just think maybe I should just go back home. But that could lose my mind instantly, because I thought I didn't want to be the one to come back home empty-handed, since my cousin was already waiting for other things in other queues. So with my friend, we are there, we are waiting, and we are chit-chatting. This was such a huge crowd. It seemed as if everyone in our community had sent a special envoy on a bread finding mission, because it was such a huge crowd. So we waited and waited and waited and waited.
It looks like it's really piling up a little bit, doesn't it?
Finally the bakery doors open, and now everyone is trying to push the front, just like I predicted. Now everyone's trying to push the front to get a loaf of bread. And then, 8-year-old me is also trying, in the crowd, to push to the front, get the front. I tried to stretch my 8-year-old hand to get the bread, but it's not doing any mission. So I'm being pushed, I'm being shoved. I even remember being elbowed. That was tough times. And, I managed to maneuver, and finally I got, a loaf of bread. And then I moved over to the designated payment point. I was so relieved, emotionally and physically. Physically, because I paid for the bread, so the paper bag wasn't heavy anymore. And emotionally, if anyone was going to come home empty-handed, it was definitely not going to be me. So I was super proud of what I had done. And I moved from paying for the bread, now I'm just peeing on it and holding it by the neck so that it doesn't run away. And I'm feeling so proud of myself. Because this is something that I didn't even want to do in the morning. Look at me now, I've gotten the bread. I can't wait to go home and show everyone that, I had gotten the bread. And now I'm pacing and walking home. And the thought hits me, and I think, is it always this satisfying to be a provider? Is it always this satisfying, to fight for something, to help your family survive and make it, Is it always this satisfying, Because I was imagining going home and watching everyone eating their bread and be like, yeah, I did that. So I just thought, is it always this satisfying, to be a provider? Is this how really it feels? And now I'm pacing home, and I also think to myself, at dawn, I had left home just an 8-year-old boy. But now at dusk, as I was walking home with my bread in hand, it's now at dusk, just to show you the amount of time I waited in the queue. And I'm walking home with my bread in hand, and I was really a breadwinner, Like literally. Thank you.
was Webster Ifeanyopa Makombe. Webster is a food systems activist, a nutrition advocate, and a lawyer in Zimbabwe. He is also the curator of a mini food festival called Napi Tapi. The word Napi Tapi in his native language loosely translates to finger-licking good in English. To see photos of Webster as a boy with his mom, and today, still a breadwinner, go to themoth.org.
I'll be back.
In a moment, we hear from two South African storytellers about finding new friends in unexpected places when the Moth Radio Hour continues.
The Moth Radio Hour is produced by Atlantic Public Media in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, and presented by the Public Radio Exchange, prx.org.
This is the Moth Radio Hour from PRX. I'm Jody Powell. We're bringing you stories from our main stage show in Johannesburg, South Africa, with the theme Power and Possibility. The energy in the theater at the University of Johannesburg was electric. I remember sitting next to Sarah Austin Jeunesse, a co-director. We were both swept up in a deep, sweet, infectious feeling that we were both about to experience something amazing. Folks started filing in from the busy lobby, dressed to the nines, and the amber and blue lights dancing on the stage as the rows started to fill up. As the local violinist Daphne serenaded us, the room felt quiet, and then a roar engulfed us to welcome our host, South Africa's gem and local poet, Lebo Mashile. It was like we all knew that we were in for a good time. Here's Lebo with a story of her own.
Joburg, are you feeling good tonight? I've been a working artist my entire adult life. And when I became a mom, I was committed to breastfeeding. But being a working artist means that I spend 25 to 30% of my time on the road, in planes, in trains, working in places where people will have me, like everybody else in the room who's self-employed or who's an entrepreneur. You go where the work is. So this meant that I spent a lot of time when my children were first born breastfeeding in public toilets, in airports, in hotel rooms, in the bathrooms of television studios or backstage, in the backstages of theaters, in sound recording studios when I was doing my second album. I remember doing an interview once and my boobs started leaking, as they do. And thankfully I was wearing this polyester red dress. And the director was also a mom, Gina Schmuckler. Shout out to Gina wherever you are. Gina took me straight away into the bathroom. I dried my dress, my boobs, my bra on the hand dryer, and then went back into the studio and did my job. I was pumping milk while I was doing my second album. I pumped milk in home affairs, being stared at by Abu Para. I've pumped milk. I've rushed to the toilet, getting off of long haul flights to go and pump milk in the bathroom, begging air hostesses and airline workers for safe places to pump. I've pumped and had to ask hotel staff to show me where the coldest freezer is in the building. Not the fridge that's in the hotel room. I want the one that you guys use for the food that we eat. And most of the time, in fact all of the time, I was met with tremendous compassion and humanity from ordinary people, from waiters and cleaners and chefs and cooks who are like, okay, we'll take your milk and we'll put it in the deep freeze in the kitchen. That happened in Gaborone, in Lagos, in Abeokuta, that happened in Lesotho. The fridge in the hotel room wasn't working, and they didn't have a deep freeze that was cold enough for me to be able to keep the milk. So I put the milk outside on the balcony in the middle of winter in Lesotho where it snows. And when I woke up in the morning, the milk was frozen and I took it back home to feed my babies. Probably the most exciting experience was attending Ake Festival in Abeokuta and freezing the milk at the Holiday Inn at the hotel. Shout out to the staff there. They let me freeze it all week. And then I had to travel through Mohammed Murtala Airport in Lagos. If you've experienced it, you know that it's like sliding down an African rabbit hole, that place. It is a warp zone. At that time, the security would open your suitcase and they would go rummaging through your stuff looking for things before you could even check your bag in. So I was like, yo, my milk, it's over, all this work. Fortunately, I had bath salts with me and my brain kicked in, and when the security guard saw the bath salts, he was more interested in that, which deflected my attention, his attention from the cooler bag sitting there. So he's like, what's this? I'm like, this is what we call siwasho. This is to protect me from demons and dark forces as a woman traveling alone. He was like, you believe in that? I was like, yes, wholeheartedly, I swear by it. They were so terrified of that, of me. They let me just go through, close my suitcase. They didn't check anything. I could have come back into South Africa with crack. The law in South Africa says that as a breastfeeding parent, you are entitled to 2 20-minute breaks during the course of the day to go and pump milk or feed your child. That's in addition to the tea breaks and the lunch that you are entitled to by law. But there are no places for parents to pump. I found myself at the mercy of individuals without whom I wouldn't have been able to feed my children. I went to Colombia to the Medellin International Poetry Festival, and I took vitamin B tablets for 10 days because the nursing sister told me that would keep my milk up. And I sat there with my Medilla pumping, and came back, and my child side-eyed me because they didn't want the milk anymore. We go through a lot, or I went through a lot, and people who breastfeed go through a lot. Shout out to my kids, they're in the audience somewhere. They're still chowing me alive, eating my money. I love them so much. Our next storyteller says that their superpower is that as a pharmacist, they ensure that people who need medicine get the medicine they need. From right here in Mzansi, South Africa. Please give it up for Nsobo Maimele. I had spent about a decade of my life in the capital city of South Africa, where I had been studying. I studied pharmacy. I had qualified. I was proud of myself. So was my family, especially my grandmother, who was always guaranteed paracetamol and Panado for herself and her tea club. To start off my pharmacy career, I found myself in a town. It was mountainous, it had farms. Everyone was up in everyone's business. But while living there, I could not make friends. I had not made friends. I found it to be very lonely. I spent my nights reading and indoor, where I didn't talk to people. This was different from what I was used to in the capital city, because there were lights over there. I had friends, I would hang out with them, I had good conversations, I would go shopping, I would enjoy myself, and there I was all by myself. Working at the pharmacy was also challenging because I didn't have any passion, I didn't have inspiration. Prescription after prescription, no motivation whatsoever. But then one day, a month into moving there, I said that maybe let me give this town a chance. I woke up, I was like, I'm going to do this. I opened my closet, took out this skirt that I loved. It was a skirt that I enjoyed wearing while I was still a student. I took out my flat shoes because obviously you run around in the pharmacy, it's chaos. You need to be comfortable. So I took out my flats and I was like, I'm going to the hospital, I'm doing this today. I walk into the hospital from my residence. I find patients already queuing up there, sitting there waiting for us to start working. I see a pile of files with prescriptions in them that need to be filled. Then I start filling up my prescription and I'm working. One of my colleagues comes to me. She's not my friend, we're not friendly, we're just professional. She says, you look inappropriate. What do you mean I look inappropriate? She says, you don't look like suitable for work, you look improper for work. I turned around and I asked her, where's the guideline? Who defines how we look? Where's the dress code policy? She says, there's no policy, it's left up to you to determine whether you look appropriate or not for work. There I was a law-abiding citizen. I like policies because I always abided by them. Give me a guideline, I'll follow it. But after her telling me that, I felt so low. I was not happy in this town, but that was the lowest moment of my time spent there since I arrived. I felt lonely. I felt this dead silence in myself. I felt violated by this lady. I needed to take a break. I needed a breath of fresh air. But I kept calm. I told myself, let me just work. And once I can take a break, I'll get out of the hospital and just breathe. When the time came, I took a drive out. Just as I was about to get out of the town, I spotted these ladies that I had seen in the pharmacy, but I've never engaged with them. I decided to stop. And I was like, I'm going to get out. And I thought to myself, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? What am I going to say? These ladies were known sex workers. One of them stepped up and approached me as I was getting out of my car. She asked me, what do you want? Then I looked at her and I was like, I just want to talk. I had a bad day today. I'm not really feeling well. Looking all colorful, they've got cool hairstyles. They welcomed me and said, you can join us. The first question that I was asked was, how do you like the weather?
Man, I hated the weather in that town. It was hot. It was hot. Then we started talking about our lives, our past, our aspirations, what we liked, what we didn't like. We gossiped about the people in the town, how judgmental they were. We talked about the elections because the mayor was busy campaigning for elections, and yet we didn't even have running water. We said, why is she campaigning? She cannot even fulfill the current promises, and yet she wants more votes. While we were talking, I warmed up to them, and I told them about my day. I told them about my skirt and what had happened to me in the pharmacy. Then I said, you know, a lady that is not my friend, we don't speak. She told me that my skirt is too short. They looked at me, I looked at them, they looked at my skirt, which was longer than what they were wearing. They laughed. I laughed as well. It was hilarious. We laughed. They started telling me about how they don't like coming to the hospital. They felt judged. They didn't like the healthcare workers. They didn't like the environment that was there. And yet I felt so comfortable with them. That moment I thought to myself, something must be wrong here. And as I was driving back to my residence at the hospital, I started thinking to myself that these ladies felt unsafe and they didn't feel welcome at my hospital where they receive care. And yet I was sitting with them in their office. That's their hotspot. They made me feel so good. They lifted this heavy weight off my shoulder. I felt so good when I left. And I thought to myself that something needs to change, because there I was a Christian girl, conservative. I had grown up in a Christian background, Christian home. And I was saved and baptized. I loved the Lord. And yet, when I looked at these ladies, at the back of my mind, I had a list of things that people had to abide by for them to be on my good list. These ladies didn't need any of that. They were not on the good list, but yet when I was with them, I felt good. My grandmother was a woman who believed in service. She liked serving people. She made sacrifices. Her family was actually moved by the apartheid government from where they were living into a remote area, and my mom still had to continue with school. So my grandmother took it upon herself to walk my mom between home and school, which was about 15 kilometers, so that her child would have an education. If my grandmother is my pillar of advocacy, if I live by what my grandmother was doing, then I need to change my strategy of how I deliver services in this town. I need to serve with dignity. I need to love my patients. I need to treat them better. I need to make them feel welcome, especially these ladies that I had met. A week later, after that whole transition, I spotted one of the ladies coming into the pharmacy. I smiled at her, gave her VIP treatment. I had made a transition in the way that I was treating our patients, because not only did they have to come to me to get services, I would take the services to them. I decided that I would put the care back in healthcare. I decided that this would need to change. Now it's more than 10 years later, I still think about those ladies. I still think about the turning point of my life. I'm now married. I've got children of my own. My daughter is always asking me, very inquisitive, asking, Mom, how do you know good people? Where do you find good people? Where do you draw inspirations from? She's a little too young to understand this story. And yes, I can't wait to share it with her once she's older. But I looked her in the eye and I told her, good people can be found anywhere. Inspiration can be drawn from any place, especially the places where we least expect it. Thank you.
Nisova Mayamele. Her work in healthcare has won her multiple awards, and she's passionate about cultivating a safe and inclusive environment for people to thrive. You can share these stories or others from the Moth Archive and buy tickets to a Moth storytelling event in your area through our website, themoth.org. There are Moth events year-round. Find a show near you and come out and tell a story. You can find us on Facebook and X at The Moth, and on Instagram and TikTok at Moth Stories. In a moment, a woman and her husband are determined to make some money in Malawi when the Moth Radio Hour continues.
So tell me about your story today.
No. They found the third one.
Huh?
They found the third one. They got the guy back, the alien that they found back to his ship in his time. And there's the girl protagonist in it.
Oh, there's what now?
There's a girl protagonist, one of the main characters.
A girl that what?
A girl protagonist, one of the main characters. They call it protagonist.
What is protagonist?
It's somebody that's... It's just one of the characters, basically. It's one of the main characters. And then the antagonist is the one that's kind of against the main character.
A protagonist is pro and antagonist
Right.
anti.
Right, exactly. Anyways, so they have this time machine thing that they figured out. And she went back and saved her mom because she felt like she killed her mom because she yelled at her mom right before her mom ran out the door and into the street and got hit by a car.
She didn't kill her, she ran. It's her fault. Sorry, go ahead.
So they went back in time and stopped her mom from running out into the street. And now the aliens that were halfway home, something's happening and their ship's breaking apart after they used this time machine thing and they went back. So I'm not sure what's happening. But her mom's alive, and she has a baby, has a younger sister. So, I don't know, it's almost done now. We got about 8 pages.
What is that called?
It's called The Third Chamber.
Third Chamber?
Yeah.
I could probably catch it on video.
It's not a movie.
Huh?
It's never a movie.
It's what?
It's not a movie, baby. It's a story. It's a book.
Bummer. I don't like to read.
Is that it's not the big history, it's the small history. But it's the one that we carry with us. The one
Isn't it nonfiction?
feeds, that bleeds into so many different aspects of our lives that we don't
Huh?
necessarily
No, it's definitely fiction.
It's fiction thing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Congratulations to all.
I thought it was. I thought you said it was beginning.
Evening, and we are grateful to you for your vulnerability, for your honesty, for the work that you do, for what we see and what we don't see. We thank you. And now we invite our final storyteller to the stage.
A package
Coming
is something
to
I
us
ordered.
all the way from Malawi. Can you please give it up for Matilda?
I know what it is. It's not money.
I know. It wouldn't be a package.
Huh?
It'd say letter if it was a check.
Those LPL stuff come in packages
Growing
too.
up, I always wanted
They're
to be
kind of like folded
flight
up and everything
attendant.
else, and
But when I finished
not a
my
purchase
high school,
package.
I went straight into marriage. Together with my husband, we were living in Lilongwe, the capital city of Malawi. Life was difficult. I was not working. We had no business. We had no source of income. Yet we had a lot of responsibility
to take care of people who came from the village to stay with us. Traditionally,
She was
people
pretty
would
when it
come
first
from the
came down
village to stay with
into
you
the
in
trees.
town in search of greener pastures. In the first years of my marriage, I had 3 people joining us. And then it was one after the other. And then we thought of doing something, getting employment. We couldn't because our qualifications could not match the job market. It was tough for us to pay rent, difficult to pay water bills. At times the water board would come and disconnect our water supply, and at night we would wake up and connect it illegally. Life was not kind to us. The people I stayed with, most of them were not even in my relations. One girl came because she was chased away from her matrimonial home. Instead of coming alone, she came with 2 kids, 2 cousins, and 1 house help. 6 people at one go in my house. This one really got my nerves. I could not imagine having a family within my family, which was already struggling. To bring food on the table was difficult. And here I am with 20 people in my house. I remember one day on a Sunday, and you know Sundays are good days for your best meal. So I prepared fried rice mixed with raisins, colored it yellow. And then I prepared chicken kwasu, which is basically chicken stew, so that when I get back from church, I should come and eat my delicious meal. I kept my rice and my chicken in the kitchen. While in the church, I was waiting for the last prayer. As soon as the last prayer was said, I quickly went home, straight into my kitchen, and I got a shock of my life. There was mess in my kitchen. Plates were all over. It was like there was a party or something. I checked my pot of rice. There was nothing. I checked my pot of chicken kwasu, not even a bone in it. I got furious, heartbroken. I almost cried. I was told that one of the boys had invited his friends to come and eat my meal. And I'm here thinking, as I was walking back to my bedroom, is this the way these people are going to pay me for my kindness? Should I chase them back to their village? But I couldn't, because casually, that was going to be like I'm an unmannered person. I kept it like that. We tried everything we could to make ends meet, but it was difficult. I remember my auntie giving me a sewing machine. I started a business, a tailoring business. It couldn't work. It was a failed business. I tried banana fritters. I'm a very good cook. But these tasty banana fritters, on this day when I woke up 3 a.m., prepared 3 buckets of banana fritters. Unfortunately, the boys I hired to sell my banana fritters did not show up. I ended up donating the banana fritters to a nearby orphanage care. And then one day, my husband told me, this was after dinner, sitting on our bed in our bedroom. He said, I have an idea. Do you remember the toilet in the bus terminal? I got interested. What about the toilet in the bus terminal? What is our concern with